Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sue. And today, our guest is Dr. Whitney Casares. She is a pediatrician and also an author of The Working Mom Blueprint, Winning at Parenting Without Losing Yourself. Wow. Okay. Can't wait to hear more about that. And you also have a blog at modernmommydoc.com, right? Oh,
That's correct.
okay. So I don't know if I'm freezing or you're freezing, but hopefully the conversation will move on well. So here's the thing we're going to start with. Yes, Sherry is so right. Please put all your comments and we will share them. Sherry, well, before we even start, we're just going to say happy, healthy parents are an imperative. And that is why we are here today, because
That's right.
Whitney's going to give us some insights on how to do a better job than most of us are doing. So you say moms need to put themselves first. I remember Ayelet Waldman wrote an article years ago saying something like that, and she got beaten up. Has the culture changed now so that we can actually have this conversation?
Yeah, I think so. There were also books 20 years ago that said like it's not all about you. Things have changed. I think we've realized that there is a happy medium. When I say you have to put yourself first as a mom, I don't mean you need to every single day run out and get nannies and petties and that your kids don't matter. And I actually think that your connection with your kids matters intensely. It's just that I know that the generations that said, okay, you being like the A student or you showing up beautifully as a mom, that doesn't really work. Then the generations that said, actually, it's all about your hard work and how much effort you put into it, that somewhat works. But that we also deserve as human beings and need moments of rest and moments of reflection, and that actually makes us more productive and more effective. So when I say you have to put yourself first, it's to be strategic as a mom so that as you are taking care of yourself in really good, healthy ways, you don't end up needing to do all these things that don't take care of yourself very well, but feel like they take care of you, like, drinking too much or watching too much TV or doing all the things, right? Instead, you're taking care of yourself in little incremental ways every single day. So, yes, I think the culture has changed. I think we're realizing we have to come to grips with this idea that moms have to take care of themselves, have to put themselves first, that actually is better for their kids in the long run.
I think so much of our lives we heard about moms being selfless. So it's really hard to get away from that concept as that being a good mom, the best mom. And then the other piece of it also is like, I don't want to add more things to my plate. So right now you're talking and I'm feeling like, okay, so what do I have to do? So let's jump into that. You have a blueprint. And frankly, hearing one more blueprint for me was a little bit like, ugh. And then I spoke with you and I was blown away by your blueprint. I think about it all the time now. So
Mm-hmm.
share your wisdom with us.
So the blueprint is about doing less in the end. You're right, because we all do not need one other task to put on our plate, something else to pile on. This is what the blueprint is. So I call it the Centered Life Blueprint. There's a circle in the middle, and that is what I call your centered vision. And that is your vision for how you want your life to feel and to look like in the next 10 years, 15 years. And I do not mean you have a mansion on the hill and you have maids that come and do every single thing for you. I mean, at the end of the day, what do you want it to be that you feel like you've accomplished in 10, 15 years? What are the things that are the most important to you? And I break that down into 5 center points. So there's like little 5 wedges of a pie within that centered vision. So first we just had to do kind of free association to figure that out and then figure out, okay, what are those 5 points? For me, it is physical health and wellness for myself. It's financial freedom. And I don't mean freedom, again, like I'm a billionaire. I mean freedom from debt, freedom from $250,000 of medical student debt that I had at one point. The other point is great connection with my kids. It's contribution to other women. And then it's exploration and new adventures and travel. When I think about my life in 10, 15 years, those are the places where I want to be spending my time, my focus, and my energy. So that becomes your centered vision and your centered points.
And
And then
that's all. I mean, we can't take your template and apply it to ours. We have to think about what our, right? It's very customized and individualized.
exactly. So every single person has their own centered vision for their life. The things that matter to me might not matter to you at all. I mean, I think there's going to be some overlap for most people, but a vision of what would make you feel happy and joyful and present and grounded, that's completely individualized. One thing I do say for people is it's not about this is for just the people who have privilege, or this is just the people who haven't had any bias or haven't had injustices against them. We know in pediatrics, I'm a practicing pediatrician, that every single person, every single child, no matter what they've been through or the circumstances they're in, they deserve to have the empowerment and the agency to want something better for their life and more for their life. And in fact, in pediatrics, we talk about this idea of resilience being kind of the cure for ACEs or adverse childhood events that happen, to traumatic things that happen that are really not great for kids. And part of resilience is control. So, this vision is about you creating some control and some agency over your life and a direction and a path for where you want things to go in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So you have the circle, and then outside the circle are all the things that need to get done in life and that need to be addressed that are important, but that aren't as important as what's inside the circle. So I defined it into 4 different categories. The top category is the non negotiables. These are things that you have to do and only you can do. As a pediatrician, these are emails that I have to do to patients and to families, or my patient notes that I have to do. If I, in my house, I am the person who is responsible for laundry. That's a task that my husband and I have divided up that I've decided I'm going to be in charge of. And I'll talk about other tasks that I swap out to him too. But that's so those are the non negotiables. And really, the cure for the non negotiables is this idea of efficiency, of being productive in those areas, of deciding I'm going to do this kind of as quickly as possible while still doing it well. And then also deciding for some things, I'm going to do it with what Denise Hamilton from Work 360 calls selective mediocrity, right? Like, I'm going to decide it actually doesn't have to be done as well as I've always thought it did because it doesn't matter. So, like the laundry, that's on my task list, but the clothes aren't folded all that well. I only do it for about, 24 hours a day where I'm doing or a week where I'm doing washing and drying, and then I fold the laundry for 2 hours a week. That's it. That's the only time that I give to the laundry. And then if it doesn't get done or it's not done well, oh well, I wait till next week. So that's the non-negotiables up top. And then down below are the swappables. And those are the things that if you are parenting with a partner, or if you have kids who are old enough, who are teenagers, that you can be giving to someone else, that you could be swapping out to somebody else, that maybe you've taken on or said, oh, well, I'm just going to do it. Nobody else will raise their hand to say I'm going to be responsible for this. But that really you need to think about, is there someone else in my household or community that could be doing this for me? And I don't just mean paying for a house cleaner to come or outsourcing this to like a private chef. I mean, maybe there's another parent in your community that you could swap out. Like, they're going to do school pickup, but you're going to do grocery shopping for the 2 families, that type of thing. And then in the left lower hand corner are the contaminators. And these are all the things that we tend to say yes to in life because of obligation or because of guilt, but that we don't necessarily want to do. We're not doing them because it fits with our vision. We're just doing them because we feel like we should or because we always have. And for me, these have been things like making sure that I'm volunteering in the classroom or joining that PTA meeting or saying yes to a committee that my boss wants me to be on that really I'm not excited about at all. I'm just doing it because he's asked me to do it. And so I say yes. And then the top left corner are the heartstrings. And these are the things that we want to make time for in our life, but that aren't part of that vision. So this is for me, like seeing my in-laws and making sure that I spend some time with them. I love my in-laws, but it's not like my absolute favorite activity to do. And also, I have a child who's high needs. And when we see my in-laws, it actually tends to be pretty stressful for her. And so the heartstrings are things that you have to find a way, shape, or form that fits with your needs as well as the needs of the other person. So for us as a family, that means for my daughter that we can't really go to their house and spend weeks on end, that it's significantly better for it to be that we meet in a neutral place, that we arrive a day early, and then that we're only there for a pretty limited amount of time, and that we have some pretty specific guidelines around what will work for us as a family when we're with them. So basically what you do is that you have this centered vision, the things that you've decided, okay, this is where I want to spend my time and my energy and my attention. You have all these things on the outside that need to be addressed and that can be addressed, but you see them for what they are, for not central to you. And what you're doing is trying to push your circle, your centered vision out toward the edges of kind of the box of life, and not let these corners of this box of life with all these things that have to get done define you and push in on you. And then there's
Okay,
one
so
more piece of the blueprint in the middle that I'll talk about as well.
okay, so let me just share. Sherry seems like she already read your book, or else she just intuitively knows. Non-negotiable for me is reducing my to-do list when my personal needs are not being fulfilled. So, yeah, that sounds like a great plan, Sherry. And I want to say, so your team speaks to parents of teenagers. So much of the things we do are healthy for our kids to learn in terms of laundry, cooking, things that we could delegate in that outside square. So where could somebody get your blueprint if they don't have the book? Is there a place they could go just to see the diagram of that template?
Yeah, absolutely. If you go on our Instagram at Modern Mommy Doc, we talk about the blueprint all the time on there. So it's at Modern Mommy Doc, and we have what we call Monday morning stories. So if you go in our highlights on our stories, you actually can walk through and see exactly what the blueprint is, all the different steps of it. The other thing we have is our Modern Mamas Club, and we have a 30-day trial there. So if you went in there, we have all of our on-demand videos as well, and the entire blueprint manual that you could see in there as well.
Great. And we also have 5 books to give away. Thank you, Whitney. And
Yeah.
so I think Jessica put it in the comments up on top, but maybe you could put it in again. If you just email editor@yourteenmag.com, you'll be entered into the raffle. And so one whole chapter in this book is dedicated to the question, what's for dinner? And what's for dinner is really just a question that came up in my life every day. I think I had my youngest go to college 3 years ago. So for something like 20 something years, every day, someone asked or everyone asked, what's for dinner? And it drove me insane. So tell us what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah. So I am a busy working mom, right? I wrote this book because this is my life and it's the life of so many moms that I see in my actual pediatrics practice and that I see banging their head against a wall, wondering, how do I feed my kids? I see kids from newborn age all the way up to age 23 years old. So it really runs the gamut. So I understand about this question of what's for dinner. What I tell people is there's really 2 ways to address what's for dinner. Number 1 is if you're a pre-planner, awesome, good on you to figure out some type of like batch cooking that you're doing on a Sunday. Okay. And I have plenty of friends that do that and partners that do that. And if you're capable of doing that, amazing. I always have such high hopes for myself that I'll be able to do that. And then something more exciting comes along on a Sunday and I don't want to batch cook. So that's off the table for me. But what I do is this. I've decided, okay, back to how my dad used to do it, really. Mondays are for spaghetti and meatballs and a vegetable. Tuesdays are teriyaki Tuesdays or taco Tuesdays, and we're having the same thing on Mondays, on Tuesdays, on Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And so when I shop, I might mix it up in terms of what's the meat or what's the salsa that I'm going to do, but I do it in a very, very simple way. When kids are older or teenagers, assigning them one meal a week, I think is an excellent idea, or one meal a month. Again, this is off to this like kind of delegating. But as a busy mom, if that's going to create, or a busy parent, if that is going to create more stress for you, then don't have that be part of your weekly meal plan. Instead, delegate that on like a Sunday once a month when it doesn't really matter, if it gets done quickly and you have more bandwidth for it. The other thing is this decision about, and you and I kind of talked about this, Susan, about like who's in control of dinner to be eaten. I know it's the worst to make a gourmet meal for your family and then have it be that your kids don't eat any of it, that they say, no, I don't want that at all. And so in pediatrics, and this goes for teenagers too, we talk about this entire division of like responsibility, that as a parent, you're responsible for providing healthy, nutritious foods, and then your kids are responsible for deciding if they're going to eat it or not. Excuse me. So if your child or your teenager decides that they're not going to eat it, it's not then your responsibility as a parent, as a mom, to make them something else, to be a short order chef for them. You can say, hey, listen, this is what's for dinner. And if you have a teenager that has the wherewithal to make something else for themselves, by all means, offering some choices within the meal so that your kid isn't totally freaked out by the broccoli that's there. That's a good idea. And also family meal style as much as possible, where there's 3 or 4 or 5 bowls. So that way you can say to your child, okay, these are the foods that are on the table. How much of this would you like? So that they don't have to eat all of the broccoli that you've put on their plate. They're deciding how much they want on their plate.
Okay, so you have a phrase, maybe it's not your phrase, maybe it's commonly known. I never heard of it. Maternal gatekeeping. And that comes into play in the things I think in the perimeter of the box where you could delegate. So like last night when I told my husband the dishwasher wouldn't open because he put the pan in wrong, I knew I was maternal gatekeeping because I want him to keep loading the dishwasher. I don't want to make it my job. But so how do we balance those things? The urge to do it the way either we would do it or what we see as the right way or effective way?
Yeah. So I first heard this term in Jancy Dunn's book, who wrote a book called How Not to Hate Your Husband After Kids, which is a very salacious title, but is actually a very even and fair book. She told me once, I've talked to her several times, she told me, I wish that I could have like had that cover on the front, and then I could have had a separate cover underneath that said how to create fair and equitable relationships between parenting partners, but it wouldn't have sold as well. Anyway, so she talks about in the book about this biological thing that happens with moms in particular, where because of our maternal instincts, when our baby first comes out, and let's say, our partner is giving them a bath, that we hover over and we go, oh my gosh, don't drown the baby, don't wash them that way. We kind of freak out. And it's fair. But then what happens? Our partner backs up, our partner, and it doesn't matter what their gender is, you know what I mean? Just whoever it is, it's not us, backs up and says, oh, okay, well, I don't like being criticized. You obviously have a specific way you want to do it. And so I'm just going to take a step back, and I guess I'm not going to contribute to this. And maybe they don't do it the first time, but if you're continually kind of criticizing or hovering or making yourself the person who is the authority, then they tend to withdraw from being participatory. And so that's a problem, right? That means they're probably going to withdraw from other parts of parenting as well. And I'm sure you can imagine, Susan, that as a pediatrician, this was very, very difficult in my family because my husband knew that I was the authority on a whole host of topics. And so I really had to watch myself to say, okay, you are the expert diaper changer in this family. As my kids got a little bit older, okay, you are the expert on the math homework. You do that. Unless you're around, I'm around, you're the person who's going to be doing that with them. Okay, you're going to be the expert on teaching them, how to do karaoke, whatever it is. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just that you need to have some things that both you and your partner are individually experts on if you are parenting with another person, because it's just human nature to back on up and decide, I'm not going to invest my time and energy into something that someone constantly criticizes me about.
So I think that completely applies to teenagers. When we
Mm-hmm.
delegate to teenagers, we feel like we're the wise one with so many more years, and we need to show them exactly how to do it over and over and over again. And then the temptation for them is to just say, well, I'm not going to get it right. So
Yeah.
do the same rules apply? Because really they do need to learn, right? Like you need to show them how to do laundry and how to do other, like make a dinner.
Yeah, the same thing applies to children, to teenagers, to young adults. And actually, this is part of the problem with this perfectionistic stance that was taken, 20 years ago or so about like getting the A is the most important. That's where the book Mindset by Carol Dweck comes in. If any of you have not read that book and have teenagers, it's an excellent book about really reframing what is our goal as parents. Our goal is to create 35-year-olds who are thriving. Our goal is to create a person who is capable of getting a second job, not their first job out of college, not someone who has some great resume or application for college. We want to create the person who is able to problem solve, who is able to come to something that's difficult in their life and then be able to figure out a way out of it. And part of that, the simplest thing we can do is when our kids are struggling or when they're not, to back up, let them figure it out and say, I'm here for you if you need help. But I know you've got this. And I believe that even if it's not the same way I would do it, it's okay. I trust you that you are able to figure this out for yourself.
And not just the second job, but getting fired. Like those
Yes.
things, those stumbling blocks that are so hard. So Sherry, of course, Sherry, we're so glad you're here today because you have great things to add. A big lifesaver. When my kids were in middle school, I instituted work hours. I was available until 9 p.m. for signatures, homework help, transportation decisions, Amazon orders. I love that. That is amazing. That probably for families during COVID, that would have been such a game changer, right? Like I'm working now, but I'm available 3 to 4. I love it.
Yeah, Cherry, I was going to say, I love that because actually that fits perfectly into this blueprint we're talking about. Because a lot of people will ask me then, well, how do you then decide? Let's say you have 5 things in the middle of your centered circle or your centered life vision, and they all matter to you. So then now sometimes you have work that you really want to pay attention to and kids that you want to pay attention to. That's why basically I developed in the very center of the circle this area that's you, of spending some time with yourself, even if it's just 5 minutes a day of like being quiet and learning how to trust yourself and know yourself, because those little rubs and inner conflicts do come up where you have to decide, okay, this is a moment I'm going to be attending to myself. I have work hours, and these are a moment that I'm going to be available to you for all these things that you have requests on. So I love you're doing that because I think that's absolutely the answer. It's kind of dividing up and creating agenda times for work and for your family.
Okay, so all of this is really great for our well-being, which is supremely important. But I would be like the thing that would push me over to jump into this and try and adopt this is because of how good it is for my kids. So why is it good for my kids? Like right now, I feel like, yeah, I need to save myself. I'm going crazy. I need to, but really, what are we showing our kids when we put ourselves as a priority?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the deal. We know that in family systems, when parents are struggling, when parents are stressed, when parents are burnt out, they are going to be more likely to snap at their kids. They're going to be more likely to be frazzled in their decision making with their kids about what's Instead, when they are centered, when they know exactly where they want to be, that there's going to be a ripple effect out to their kids. They're going to be calmer with their kids. They're going to be less stressed. They're going to be able to more make trouble. So about my children and about how I would never want it to be that my kids are constantly stressed out, constantly feeling conflicted, constantly feeling burnt out, constantly feeling like they're not enough, constantly feeling like they have to continue working harder and harder and harder, just doing all this junk that's out there, right? And so if I want my kids to not live that way, I have to live that way now. I have to model it. My kids are going to be doing the same things I do. If I model being burnout, being stressed constantly, my children are going to learn that. If I model having wherewithal, being really purposeful, having a path that makes sense and is meaningful, my kids are going to learn that as well. They're going to benefit in the short term, and they're also going to benefit in the long term.
That's great. That's good motivation for most of us who think what we're doing is in the best interest of our kids, to see that taking care of ourselves is really high up there in the best way to take care of our kids. Okay, here's our last question. What makes you hopeful? So, and in particular, have you seen that your paradigm, that your blueprint has changed people's lives?
Yes. I have had moms, working and non-working, come up to me and say, "I adopted this blueprint, and oh my gosh, I feel like for the first time, I'm able to make a decision that actually aligns with what I want without feeling guilty about it." I've had dads in my practice come up to me and say, "I know you wrote this book for working moms and for moms in general, but my partner showed it to me, and like, is it cool if I do it too?" And they've taken it on and seen such a difference. I have seen moms tell me that for the first time, they have not been yelling at their kids nearly as much because they've been taking 5 minutes a day for themselves. I mean, small incremental steps to, again, it's about taking care of yourself, but it's also just about slowing down enough to know yourself and trust yourself so that then you can put things in their proper place. Like, I would hate it for dishes to, in the end, be the thing that runs your life, right? Like, that's just crazy. But that's what happens when we're not intentional about thinking about what do we want for ourselves, what do we want for our kids, then the small things that don't matter at all, they end up running us. So I'm so hopeful because yes, I've seen this absolutely change lives.
Dr. Whitney Casares, thank you so much for being here with us. And I want to remind everybody to email us. We have 5 books to give away. So email editor@yourteenmag.com and we'll put you into the raffle. And thank you. I really, really appreciate this personally and that you're sharing it with our audience. Thanks so much.
You bet. Thanks for having me.